Welcome to Story Tales. Please like this video and subscribe to Story Tales. I hope you enjoy the story. Let's begin.
Hollis Rayner pulled her rental car to a stop in front of the lake house, cutting the engine and sitting motionless for a moment. Through the windshield, the two-story cabin loomed against the darkening Virginia sky. Cedar siding, wide porch, picture windows overlooking the water, exactly as advertised on the rental site. Exactly as she described to her family when she'd invited them. The gravel driveway was empty. She checked her watch. 5:47 p.m. She was early by 13 minutes, but she'd expected at least a few cars to be here already. Her mother had always preached punctuality like gospel. Better to be 30 minutes early than 30 seconds late, Loretta used to say. Hollis grabbed her purse and the folder containing all the reservation information. 3 months of planning, dozens of calls, and thousands of dollars had gone into this weekend. A proper family reunion, the one she'd been trying to arrange since she aged out of foster care 16 years ago. The key was under the mat, just as the rental agency had promised. The door swung open with a creak that echoed through the empty house. No suitcases in the entryway. No voices from the kitchen. No footsteps upstairs. "Hello?" she called, her voice bouncing off the bare walls. Nothing. She moved through the rooms methodically. The great room with its stone fireplace sat cold and unused. The dining table she'd arranged to have expanded to seat 12 was bare, no tablecloth. No place settings, no centerpiece. The kitchen refrigerator hummed emptily when she opened it, staring at shelves she'd paid to have stocked with food. Upstairs, 6 bedrooms with freshly made beds waited for occupants who weren't there. Back on the main floor, Hollis walked onto the back deck overlooking the lake. The sun was setting, painting the water in strokes of orange and pink. It would have been the perfect backdrop for the family photos she'd imagined taking. She pulled out her phone and checked her messages. Nothing from any family member. She opened her email and reread the confirmation she'd sent to everyone 2 days earlier. Lake House is reserved from Friday to Monday. I'll arrive around 6 p.m. on Friday to get everything set up. Can't wait to see everyone. Directions attached. Her throat tightened. She'd also sent a group text yesterday morning. Everyone still good for the reunion? I'm heading to the lake house tomorrow afternoon. 0.5 thumbs up responses. 1 can't wait from her cousin Tabitha. Nothing to suggest any change of plans. Hollis grabbed the railing of the deck, squeezing until her knuckles whitened. The empty house behind her felt like a physical weight on her shoulders. This wasn't a misunderstanding or a scheduling error. This was something else entirely. She knew what she needed to do, but it took her 10 full minutes to work up the courage. Finally, she pulled out her phone again and dialed her mother's number. The phone rang 3 times before Loretta picked up. Background noise filtered through the speaker, laughter, clinking glasses, music. Hollis, sugar. What a surprise. Loretta's voice came through, sweet as honey and twice as sticky. Where is everyone? Hollis asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. I'm at the lake house. A pause. Then Loretta's laugh, that familiar, musical sound that had once made young Hollis feel safe and now sent ice down her spine. Oh, sugar, the reunion was yesterday. Guess you missed it. The world tilted sideways. Hollis gripped the railing harder. Yesterday. The word came out strangled. That's not possible. I sent out the invitations. I confirmed with everyone. The reservation is for this weekend. Well, there must have been some confusion. Loretta's voice dripped with false concern. We all got together at Rance's place. Had a wonderful time. Shame you couldn't make it. Hollis heard a muffled voice in the background. Then Loretta's response. It's just Hollis. Says she's at some lake house. More laughter. Where are you right now? Hollis asked, though she already knew. We're having dinner at Wendell's. Just a little family get-together. Family. The word burned in Hollis's ears. I paid for this lake house, Hollis said. I covered all the expenses. I organized everything. And we appreciate the thought, honey, we really do. Loretta's tone shifted to the one she used when she was losing patience. But you know how these things go. Plans change. No one told me. I'm sure someone must have. Anyway, we'll bring you some leftovers or something. Tabitha made her famous pecan pie. Hollis didn't respond. Her eyes darkened as she stared out at the lake. The sun had dipped below the horizon now, leaving only purple shadows on the water. Hollis? You still there? Without a word, Hollis ended the call. She slipped the phone into her pocket and walked down the steps from the deck to the small private beach. The sand was cool between her toes when she removed her shoes. Water lapped gently at the shore. She sat on a rock, letting the evening air settle around her. The lake stretched dark and still before her. As Hollis stared at its surface, memories rose unbidden, breaking through the careful compartments she'd built in her mind. She was 7 years old, sitting on a bench outside a gas station convenience store. The Virginia summer heat made the air shimmer above the asphalt. "Wait right here," Loretta had said, sliding out of the driver's seat of their old Buick. "Mama is just going to make a phone call and get us some snacks." Hollis had waited. 1 hour became 2. The station attendant kept glancing at her through the window. When darkness fell, he brought her inside and called the police. Loretta never came back. Later, Hollis learned she'd left town with a new boyfriend, leaving no forwarding address. The memory shifted. She was 19, standing at a mailbox, sending another letter to the address she'd managed to track down. It was the 5th one. The previous 4 had been returned unopened, marked "Returned to Sender" in Loretta's flowing script. But hope was a stubborn thing. Hollis had just finished her first year of community college. She had a job, an apartment she shared with 2 other girls. She was making something of herself. Surely that would matter. 2 weeks later, the letter came back. This time, scrawled across the envelope, "Stop trying." The rejection had burned like acid. Another shift. She was 25, standing outside a restaurant in Richmond, watching through the window as her family celebrated Rance's college graduation. She'd learned about it through a distant cousin's social media post. She hadn't been invited, but something had drawn her there anyway. Loretta was there, looking barely older than Hollis remembered. Rance, the golden child, accepting congratulations. Tabitha taking photos. Uncle Wendell raising a toast. Hollis had almost gone inside. Almost. Instead, she'd walked away, and now, 10 years later, here she was again. Still on the outside, still reaching for connection, still being rejected. But something was different this time. Something had shifted inside her. "This time, I paid the price," she whispered to the lake. Literally. The emptiness inside her hardened into something else. Not pain. Not anymore. Resolve. She stood up, brushing sand from her clothes, and walked back to the house. In the kitchen, she opened her purse and pulled out the folder containing every receipt, every confirmation, every text and email exchange. She spread them across the counter, then pulled out her laptop. By midnight, she had a plan. Morning light streamed through the lake house windows, finding Hollis at the dining table, a laptop open before her, a notebook filled with neat, precise handwriting, and 3 empty coffee cups lined up like soldiers. She hadn't slept. The hours between midnight and dawn had been filled with research, phone calls to 24-hour legal hotlines, and methodical documentation of every cent spent on the reunion that never happened. Her eyes burned, but her mind was clear. Clearer than it had been in years. The Millbrook police station was a small brick building just off Main Street. Hollis parked her rental car in the visitor's space at 8:05 a.m., her folder of evidence tucked under her arm. The officer at the front desk looked up as she entered. "Can I help you?" "I need to file a report for fraud," Hollis said, her voice steady. "False representation, misuse of funds, and personal theft." The officer Johnson, according to his nameplate, raised an eyebrow. "That sounds serious. Let me get someone for you." 5 minutes later, Hollis sat across from Officer Marley Goodwin. a stocky woman with cropped gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "So, Ms. Rayner," Officer Goodwin said, opening a blank report form on her computer, "tell me what happened." Hollis laid out the facts with precision: the family reunion she had organized, the money she had spent on the lake house, food, activities, the confirmations from all family members, the empty house, the phone call revealing they had deliberately gathered without her. "People changing plans isn't usually a criminal matter," Goodwin said, but her tone was thoughtful rather than dismissive. "I understand that," Hollis replied. She opened her folder and removed a stack of papers, sliding them across the desk. "But this goes beyond changed plans. I have written agreements from each family member. They agreed that if I covered the expenses for the reunion, they would attend on the dates specified. They signed these agreements." Goodwin's eyebrows rose as she flipped through the documents. "These are remarkably detailed." "I work in contract law," Hollis explained. "I'm a paralegal for Brenner and Associates in Richmond." "And you got your family to sign contracts for a reunion?" "My family has a history of unreliability," Hollis said. "I wanted everything to be clear." Goodwin nodded slowly, continuing to examine the documents. "And you have proof that they gathered elsewhere?" Hollis pulled out her phone and opened Instagram. She navigated to Tabitha's profile and turned the screen toward Goodwin. "My cousin Tabitha June is an aspiring influencer. She documented everything. The most recent post, time-stamped yesterday, showed a group of people gathered in a backyard. The caption read, 'Family reunion vibes. So good to have the Ellison clan together again. #family first, #reunited, #Ellison family reunion.'" Goodwin's expression hardened as she scrolled through more photos. "There's more," Hollis said. She pulled up her banking app. "I paid for everything with my credit card. They were supposed to reimburse me for their shares after the reunion, but I've decided to freeze those accounts pending investigation." Goodwin leaned back in her chair, studying Hollis with new interest. "You've done your homework, Ms. Rayner. I learned a long time ago that preparation is the only defense against disappointment." For the next hour, Hollis provided statements, copies of documents, and contact information for each family member. When they finished, Goodwin escorted her to the door. "We'll be in touch," she said. "This isn't a simple case, but there's definitely something here worth investigating." Hollis nodded. "Thank you for taking it seriously." "One more thing," Goodwin said as Hollis turned to leave. "These people, they're your family?" "Biologically," Hollis replied, "but family should be more than DNA." Goodwin held her gaze for a moment, then nodded. "We'll be in touch soon." As Officer Goodwin began her investigation, the Ellison family was gathered at Loretta's house, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing on their horizon. Loretta Ellison sat at her kitchen table, flipping through a magazine while sipping her morning coffee. At 56, she maintained the beauty that had opened doors for her throughout her life. Her blonde hair, now helped along by monthly salon visits, was styled in soft waves, her makeup subtle but flawless, her manicure fresh. The kitchen, like the rest of her home, was a testament to appearances. Granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, a refrigerator covered in family photos, carefully curated to show only the people she acknowledged as family. "Mama, have you seen my blue tie?" Rance called from upstairs. "The Canali one." "Check your closet, second rack from the left," Loretta called back without looking up. AT-33. Rance Ellison was the pride of his mother's life. Tall, handsome, with his mother's charm and none of her cunning, he moved through the world on the assumption that he deserved the best of everything. That his business degree had been funded by his mother's manipulation of an insurance policy after his father's death was a fact he chose not to examine too closely. The fact that he still lived at home while building his investment portfolio was another unexamined reality. The front door opened without a knock, and Tabitha June breezed in, phone in hand as always. At 29, Loretta's niece had turned a lifetime of documenting family drama into a moderately successful social media presence. "Morning, Aunt Loretta," she sang, dropping her designer bag on a chair. "You will not believe the comments I'm getting on the reunion posts. Everyone is asking about Uncle Wendell's new girlfriend." "She is not his girlfriend," Loretta corrected sharply. "She's his physical therapist, and he's paying her too much." Tabitha rolled her eyes, already crafting a post about her aunt's denial. Conflict generated engagement, and engagement paid bills. The back door opened, and Wendell Ellison entered, his movements stiff from old injuries. At 60, Loretta's older brother carried the weight of his military service in Afghanistan in his body and mind. His eyes, the same striking blue as his sister's, were shadowed with memories he never discussed. "Coffee's fresh," Loretta said by way of greeting. Wendell grunted in acknowledgement, pouring himself a cup. Of all the family, he alone seemed troubled by the events of the previous day. "Heard anything from Hollis?" he asked quietly that Loretta's expression tightened. "She called last night. Apparently she was at some lake house. The one she invited us to," Wendell said. "It wasn't a question. There was a miscommunication," Loretta said dismissively. "Anyway, it worked out better having everyone here." "Not everyone," Wendell muttered, before Loretta could respond. Crystalline stumbled into the kitchen, her eyes bloodshot, her movements unsteady. At 18, the youngest member of the family was already well on her way to following the destructive patterns modeled by her elders. The daughter of Loretta's youngest sister, now deceased, Crystalline had been raised in the Ellison household since she was 12. "There's my sleeping beauty," Loretta cooed, though her eyes were critical as they swept over Crystalline's disheveled appearance. "I feel like garbage," Crystalline mumbled, reaching for the coffee. "Language," Loretta chided. "And maybe you wouldn't feel that way if you hadn't been out God knows where until all hours." Crystalline didn't respond, but her eyes, so like Hollis's, flashed with a familiar defiance. Of all the members of the Ellison clan, she alone had formed a genuine connection with the outcast Hollis during the rare family gatherings where their paths had crossed. "Did Hollis ever call you back?" she asked Loretta, her tone deliberately casual that Loretta's smile thinned. "No need to worry about Hollis. She's fine." "But the reunion—" "Was lovely," Loretta interrupted. "Now who wants breakfast?" The doorbell rang, cutting off further conversation. Rance came down the stairs, adjusting his tie. "I'll get it," he said. "Probably the package I've been waiting for." But when he opened the door, it wasn't a delivery person standing on the porch. IT was Officer Marley Goodwin, badge in hand, and behind her, calm and composed in a crisp black pantsuit, stood Hollis Rayner. "Can I help you, officer?" Rance's voice carried back to the kitchen, a note of confusion in his usually confident tone. Loretta set down her coffee cup, frowning. She moved to the hallway, the others trailing behind her like ducklings. "Officer Goodwin, Millbrook Police," the officer was saying, holding up her badge. "I'm here to speak with Loretta Ellison." "That's me," Loretta said, stepping forward with her most charming smile. "Is there some kind of problem?" Her smile faltered as she registered Hollis, standing behind the officer, silent and watchful. Officer Goodwin's expression remained professional. "Ms. Ellison, I'm investigating a report of financial fraud and breach of contract. I'd like to ask you and your family some questions." "Fraud?" Loretta's laugh was brittle. "There must be some mistake." "No mistake," Hollis said, speaking for the first time. Her voice was quiet but carried a weight that silenced the hallway. "I filed the report this morning." Loretta's eyes narrowed. "Hollis, really, this is ridiculous. May we come in?" Officer Goodwin asked, though it wasn't really a question. Rance stepped back, allowing them to enter. The family retreated to the living room, tension radiating from them in waves. Tabitha already had her phone out, recording surreptitiously until Officer Goodwin noticed. "I'm going to have to ask you to put that away, miss," she said firmly. Tabitha complied, but her eyes gleamed with the potential content this confrontation represented. "Now," Officer Goodwin continued once everyone was seated, "I'd like to ask about a family reunion that was scheduled for this weekend at Lake Martin. Ms. Rayner has provided documentation showing that she paid for a lake house rental, catering, and various activities, with the understanding that all family members would attend." "There was a change of plans," Loretta said smoothly. "These things happen in families. I hardly see how this is a police matter." "It becomes a police matter when written agreements are broken and money is misappropriated," Goodwin replied. "Written agreements?" Rance scoffed. "We didn't sign anything." Hollis, who had remained standing while the others sat, reached into the leather portfolio she carried. She walked calmly to the coffee table and laid out 6 separate documents. "These are the agreements each of you signed," she said, "stating that in exchange for my covering the costs of the reunion, you would attend on the specified dates and reimburse me for your portion afterward. And," Officer Goodwin added, "Ms. Rayner has provided evidence that you collectively agreed to change the location and date of the gathering without informing her, despite her having already paid in full for the original arrangements." "I've also frozen the accounts," Hollis added, her voice level. "The joint account my father set up that Rance has been using as his personal fund. The business account for the store that Loretta's been dipping into. And I've put a hold on the property transactions that were scheduled for next month." The color drained from Loretta's face. "You can't do that." "I already have." Hollis placed another folder on the table. "Here's what you owe me, and here's what you'll lose." The room exploded into chaos. Rance jumped to his feet, face flushed with anger. Loretta began speaking rapidly, her southern accent thickening as it always did when she was upset. Tabitha looked torn between outrage and excitement at the drama unfolding before her. Only Wendell and Crystalline remained quiet, watching Hollis with expressions that mingled respect with apprehension. "Everyone, please!" Officer Goodwin's voice cut through the noise. "One at a time." But the damage was done. The careful facade of family unity had begun to crack, revealing the rot beneath. "This is ridiculous," Rance sputtered, pacing the living room. "You can't just freeze accounts because your feelings got hurt about some family gathering." "It wasn't some family gathering," Hollis replied, her calm a stark contrast to his agitation. "It was a reunion I planned and paid for, that all of you agreed to attend. And the frozen accounts are a separate issue." "What do you mean, separate issue?" Loretta demanded. Officer Goodwin answered. In the course of filing her complaint, Ms. Rayner provided financial documentation that raised additional concerns. Specifically, unusual withdrawals from joint accounts and business accounts connected to the Ellison family store. "I have every right to make withdrawals," Rand said. "My name is on those accounts." "For business purposes," Hollis countered, "not for paying off gambling debts to Tommy Mercer." Rance stopped pacing abruptly. "How do you—" "Tommy and I went to high school together," Hollis said. "We keep in touch. He mentioned that an Ellison had been placing large bets and losing even larger amounts. It wasn't hard to connect the dots." Loretta stood up, smoothing her skirt with trembling hands. "Officer, I'm not sure what Hollis has told you, but this is a family matter that we can handle privately." "Financial fraud isn't private," Goodwin replied. "And there's more, isn't there, Ms. Rayner?" Hollis nodded. "Loretta told me the reunion was yesterday, and I missed it. But that wasn't true, was it?" She turned to the others. "What did she tell all of you about why I wasn't there yesterday?" A tense silence filled the room. Crystalline was the first to speak. "Aunt Loretta said you called the night before and said you couldn't make it, that you had a work emergency." "That's a lie," Hollis said quietly. "I never called. I was busy packing for the lake house reunion that all of you had agreed to attend." Wendell's weathered face darkened. Loretta? Is that true? Loretta's composure slipped further. I was trying to avoid drama. You know how Hollis can be. No, Wendell said, his voice hard. I don't know. Because you've kept her away from us for years. She abandoned us. Loretta snapped. The room went still at the audacity of the lie. I abandoned you. Hollis's voice was incredulous. You left me at a gas station when I was 7 years old. You never came back for me. I spent 11 years in foster care because of you. You have no idea what I was going through. And you have no idea what I went through. For the first time, Hollis's control cracked. I was a child. Your child. And you drove away and never looked back. Tabitha, unable to resist the lure of documenting the moment, had slipped her phone from her pocket and was recording again. Put that away, Hollis commanded, noticing the movement. Tabitha smirked. This is good content. My followers. Your followers have already seen plenty, Hollis cut in. She pulled out her own phone and turned it to show Tabitha's Instagram profile, including your post from yesterday. Family reunion vibes with a video mocking my absence. The video played, showing Tabitha speaking to the camera. Complete Ellison family reunion, -1. But honestly, who's missing her? Not me. Laughter followed. Crystalline gasped. Tabitha, that's awful. It was a joke, Tabitha muttered, but she had the grace to look embarrassed. Hollis turned to Crystalline, her expression softening slightly. After I left the police station this morning, I received a text from a number I didn't recognize. It was from you, wasn't it? Crystalline nodded, avoiding Loretta's glare. I wanted you to know they're awful. I want out. Out of this family. Loretta's voice was icy. After everything we've done for you? What have you done except control her? Hollis challenged. The same way you tried to control me, until I was no longer useful to you. A tense silence filled the room. Officer Goodwin, who had been observing the family dynamics with a trained eye, cleared her throat. Ms. Ellison, Mr. Ellison, I'll need statements from both of you regarding the financial discrepancies Ms. Rayner has identified, and I'll be contacting the rest of you for additional information. This isn't necessary, Loretta insisted. We can resolve this as a family. You lost the right to call this a family a long time ago, Hollis replied. But there's one more thing you should know. She reached into her portfolio and removed a yellow document encased in a protective sleeve. What's that? Rance asked, suspicion in his voice. My father's will, Hollis answered. The original version, dated 3 months before he died. The version that was never filed with the court. Loretta's face drained of color. Where did you get that? From Garrett Simcoe, Hollis replied. Dad's lawyer. That will was superseded, Loretta said, quickly. There was a later version. No, Hollis contradicted. There wasn't. I spoke with Mr. Simcoe this morning. He confirmed this is the last valid will my father signed. The one you claimed existed, the one that left everything to you, and Rance was never executed. Dad never signed it. Rance shifted uncomfortably. What are you talking about? Mom showed me Dad's will years ago. She showed you a draft, Hollis said. Not a signed, witnessed document. She turned to Loretta. You told everyone Dad changed his will right before he died, cutting me out. But he never did that, did he? Loretta's silence was answer enough. What does the Real will say? Wendell asked quietly. Hollis looked at him. It says that William Rayner, my father, left his share of the Ellison family store to me, along with the parcel of land on Creek Road. The will specifies that the property was meant to provide for my daughter Hollis, whom I have failed in too many ways to count. She swallowed hard, fighting against the emotion those words evoked. That's a lie, Loretta hissed. William would never have left anything to you. Mr. Simcoe confirmed its authenticity. Officer Goodwin interjected. In fact, he was quite relieved when Ms. Rayner contacted him. He said he's had ethical concerns about the handling of the estate for years. Rance looked stricken. But the store, the land, we've been managing those assets for years. Illegally, Hollis confirmed. And I want them back. You can't just waltz in here after all this time and take what's ours, Loretta snapped. It was never yours, Hollis replied. And I'm not taking anything. I'm reclaiming what was left to me by my father, what you stole from me the same way you stole my childhood and any chance at a real family. Crystalline stood up suddenly. I'm going with Hollis. You most certainly are not, Loretta began, but Crystalline cut her off. I'm 18. You can't stop me. She moved to stand beside Hollis. I'd rather take my chances with her than stay in this house another day. The gesture seemed to affect Hollis more than anything else that had happened. She blinked rapidly, then steadied herself. Officer Goodwin, she said, I believe you have what you need for now. I'll be staying at the lake house until Monday, as per my original reservation. After that, I'll be moving into the manager's apartment above the store while arrangements are made to transfer the property legally into my name. You can't just. Rance started. I can and I am, Hollis interrupted. You have until the end of the month to vacate the property, Loretta. As for the store, I'll be conducting a full audit of the accounts before deciding next steps. She gathered her documents, her movements efficient and precise. Crystalline, do you need to get anything before we go? The young woman nodded. I'll just grab some clothes and stuff. I'll go with you, Officer Goodwin offered, correctly reading the tension in the room. As Crystalline headed upstairs with the officer, Hollis looked around at the family that had rejected her so many times. She felt no triumph, no satisfaction, only a grim sense of justice finally being served. Why? Wendell asked suddenly. Why now, after all these years? Hollis met his gaze. Because I spent my whole life thinking I wasn't good enough for this family. Today, I realized this family was never good enough for me. The following weeks unfolded with the precision of a well-executed legal strategy. Hollis moved through each day with methodical determination, dismantling the life Loretta Ellison had built on lies and manipulation. The lake house weekend had not gone to waste. Hollis and Crystalline had stayed there as planned, using the time to talk, really talk for the first time. Hollis learned about Crystalline's struggles with addiction, her feelings of isolation within the Ellison family, her desire to break free from the toxic patterns she saw repeating around her. They never talked about you, Crystalline had said as they sat on the deck watching the sunrise. But I found old photos once in a box in the attic. You as a little kid with your dad. I knew you existed somewhere. Now, 3 weeks later, Hollis stood on the sidewalk outside the Ellison family store, keys in hand. The small-town business had been a fixture in Millbrook for generations, selling everything from hardware to homewares. Under Loretta's management, it had begun to falter. Under Hollis's, it would thrive again. The court orders had come through with surprising speed, thanks in part to Garrett Simcoe's testimony about the suppressed will. Loretta had been forced to vacate the lake house property, which Hollis had promptly listed for sale. The proceeds would fund the store's revival and Crystalline's rehab program. Rance had faced more serious consequences. The financial investigation sparked by Hollis's police report had uncovered not just gambling debts, but embezzlement from the store's accounts. He'd been arrested the previous week, released on bail pending trial. The bell above the door jingled as Hollis entered the store. The space was dusty and disorganized, inventory depleted, but she saw its potential. She ran her hand along a shelf, thinking of her father. Had he known somehow that she would need this anchor one day? Where do we start? Crystalline asked, entering behind her. The young woman looked better already, her eyes clearer after 2 weeks of sobriety, her movements more purposeful. Inventory, Hollis replied. We need to know exactly what we're working with. They spent the morning cataloging what remained in the store, making lists of what needed to be ordered. planning the reorganization of the space. Around noon, the bell rang again. Officer Goodwin stood in the doorway, out of uniform today in jeans and a faded t-shirt. "Thought I'd check how it's going," she said, looking around. "Place has potential." "We think so too," Hollis said. "Thanks for stopping by." "Not just a social call," Goodwin admitted. "Wanted to let you know there's been a development with Tabitha June." Hollis tensed. "What kind of development?" "Her channel's been demonetized," Goodwin said with a hint of satisfaction. "Apparently, someone filed complaints about unauthorized use of images and defamatory content." "Someone?" Hollis raised an eyebrow. Goodwin shrugged. "Someone with legal knowledge and documentation to back up the claims." A small smile touched Hollis's lips. She'd filed the complaints the day after the confrontation at Loretta's house, using the videos Tabitha had posted without permission as evidence. "She'll bounce back," Hollis said. "People like Tabitha always do. But maybe she'll think twice before using others for content. And maybe she'll learn there are consequences for actions," Goodwin added. She handed Hollis a business card. "My personal number. Call if you need anything. This town takes care of its own." After Goodwin left, Hollis and Crystalline returned to their work. By evening, they had a clear plan for the store's revival. They closed up and climbed the stairs to the small apartment above the shop Hollis's new home, and for now, Crystalline's too. The space was modest but comfortable, freshly painted and furnished with pieces Hollis had carefully selected. It wasn't grand like Loretta's house, but it was honest. Real. Crystalline was setting the table for dinner when Hollis's phone rang. Loretta's name flashed on the screen. Hollis stared at it for a long moment before answering. "Yes." "Well, I hope you're satisfied." Loretta's voice came through, brittle with anger. "You've taken everything." "I've taken back what was mine," Hollis corrected. "There's a difference." "You always were the dramatic one," Loretta said, her tone dismissive. "Making mountains out of molehills." "A molehill?" Hollis repeated, incredulous. "You abandoned me as a child. You lied about my father's will. You manipulated the entire family against me for decades. And when I tried yet again to rebuild some kind of relationship, you deliberately excluded me and mocked me behind my back." "It wasn't like that." "It was exactly like that," Hollis cut her off. "And now it's over." "So that's it." Loretta's voice rose. 28 years of family history just erased. Hollis took a deep breath, steadying herself. "No, Loretta, not erased. I remember everything. That's the problem." She closed her eyes, picturing the woman on the other end of the line, the mother who had shaped her early years and then discarded her, the woman whose approval she had sought for so long. "We're done here," she said finally, her voice calm. "No, I'm done." "Hollis." "Goodbye, Loretta." She ended the call and set the phone down on the counter, then turned to find Crystalline watching her, eyes wide. "You okay?" the younger woman asked. Hollis nodded, surprised to find it was true. "Yeah, I am." The phone rang again almost immediately. Hollis ignored it. It wasn't Loretta this time. She wouldn't try again so soon. Her pride wouldn't allow it. When the ringing stopped, Hollis checked the missed call. Wendell. She didn't call back. 2 days later, Wendell showed up at the store in person. He stood awkwardly among the newly organized shelves as Hollis rang up a customer's purchase. "Thanks for shopping with us," she said to the elderly woman who beamed at her. "It's good to see this place coming back to life," the customer said. "Your father would be proud." When the woman had gone, Hollis turned to Wendell. "Can I help you with something?" He shifted his weight, looking uncomfortable. "Thought I'd see how you're doing." "We're doing fine," Hollis replied, gesturing to where Crystalline was stocking shelves. "The store will be fully operational by next week." Wendell nodded, glancing around. "Place looks better already." An awkward silence fell between them. "Loretta's moving to Richmond," he said finally. "Got a small apartment there." Good for her, Hollis said, her tone neutral. Rance is talking about a plea deal. Might do some time. Hollis nodded, unsurprised. And Tabitha? Staying with friends in Charlotte, trying to rebuild her brand, whatever that means. He made air quotes around the word. Another silence. I should have done more, Wendell said abruptly, his voice rough. When Loretta left you, when she lied about the will, all of it. Hollis studied him. Of all the Ellisons, Wendell had been the least actively cruel to her over the years. But his passivity, his willingness to go along with Loretta's machinations, had made him complicit. Yes, she agreed. You should have. He flinched at her directness, but nodded. I know. I was a coward. The easy path was just easier. It usually is. Is there anything I can do now, he asked, to make amends? Hollis considered him, this aging man with his military bearing and haunted eyes. She felt no hatred toward him, but no warmth either. Just a weary recognition of another person who had failed her when she needed them most. Help Crystalline, she said. Not me. He looked over at the young woman, who was pretending not to listen to their conversation. I can do that, he said quietly. She starts rehab next week, Hollis continued. 30-day program. She'll need support when she comes out. She'll have it, Wendell promised. He hesitated, then added, and if you ever need anything. I won't, Hollis interrupted, but thank you for the offer. He nodded once, accepting the finality in her tone. Take care of yourself, Hollis. I always have, she replied. After he left, Crystalline approached the counter. He's not as bad as the others. No, Hollis agreed, but that's a low bar. Crystalline studied her face. You're never going to forgive any of them, are you? Some things can't be forgiven, Hollis said, and shouldn't be. What about me? Crystalline asked, suddenly uncertain. I was part of that family, too. Hollis's expression softened. You were a kid, and you reached out when no one else did. She touched Crystalline's arm lightly. You're not them. You never were. Later that night, as they were closing up the store, Crystalline paused, a troubled look on her face. Do you think people can change? She asked. Really change? Hollis considered the question, thinking of her mother's laugh on the phone that night at the lake house, the casual cruelty of a woman who had never faced consequences for her actions. I think some people can, she said carefully, if they want to badly enough, if they're willing to do the hard work. Like me with rehab. Exactly like that, Hollis confirmed. But others just keep repeating the same patterns, hurting the same people, and expecting different results. Loretta, Crystalline said. It wasn't a question, Hollis nodded. Loretta. 3 months later, the Ellison family store, now renamed Rayner Goods, was thriving. Hollis had modernized the inventory, created an online presence, and restored the historic building to its former charm. Locals who had started shopping elsewhere returned, drawn by fair prices, quality products, and the warm atmosphere Hollis had created. She lived simply in the apartment upstairs, investing most of the profits back into the business and into a trust for Crystalline, who had completed rehab and was now working part-time at the store while taking classes at the community college. The autumn air was crisp as Hollis closed up for the day. She climbed the stairs to her apartment, where dinner with Crystalline and Officer Goodwin, now simply Marley, awaited. The 3 women had formed an unlikely friendship in the months since the confrontation with the Ellisons as she entered the apartment. The scent of Marley's famous lasagna filled the air. Crystalline was setting the table, looking healthy and vibrant, her sobriety a daily victory. Perfect timing, Marley called from the kitchen, just taking it out of the oven. Hollis hung up her jacket and moved to the small sideboard where she kept family photos, new ones, of her with Crystalline at the lake, Marley at her cabin, the 3 of them at a local festival, a chosen family, built on mutual respect and genuine care. Among these was a single old photo Hollis at 5 years old with her father, both smiling in the sunshine outside the store. It was worn at the edges, creased from years of being carried in wallets, and moved from place to place. Next to it stood a newer frame, containing a torn photograph. The jagged edge where the rest of the Ellison family had been cut away was visible, leaving only Hollis and Crystalline in the frame. Hollis touched the edge of the photo lightly, remembering the day she'd made the cut. It had been deliberate, final, a physical representation of the boundaries she'd established. She turned away from the photos as Crystalline called her to the table. The three women settled in, passing dishes, sharing stories of their day. Laughter filled the small apartment, real laughter, not the brittle sound Hollis had grown up dreading. Later, after Marley had gone home and Crystalline had retreated to her room to study, Hollis stood at the window overlooking Main Street. The storefronts glowed in the evening darkness, the small town settling in for the night. This place that had once been the site of so much pain had become something else, entirely a home, a fresh start, a victory. She thought briefly of Loretta, now living in Richmond, still calling occasionally, though Hollis never answered. Of Rance, serving his 18-month sentence. Of Tabitha, whose social media presence had never recovered from the blow Hollis had dealt it. They were parts of her past, but they would never again define her future. Hollis turned away from the window, a small smile playing at her lips. "Next reunion's on my terms," she whispered to herself, knowing there would never be another gathering of the Ellison clan. She had found something better, a family built on choice rather than blood, on respect rather than obligation. The day after betrayal had become the first day of a new life.